Introduction. This is a two-part film highlighting the production of Resistance by theatre company Extant, Britain's leading professional performing arts company of visually impaired artists. Part 1, The Making of Resistance, tracks the journey that the company made in 2005 to create their first professional, national and international tour of Resistance, which was a theatre adaptation of the autobiography of the French blind teenage resistance fighter Jacques Le Siran. At the end of this section is an interview between the company and a surviving member of the blind resistance movement. Part 2 of this film highlights a commemorative project which Extant ran 10 years later in 2015 called Spirit of Resistance. Funded by the Greater London Fund for the Blind, it brought together young and old visually impaired participants to reflect on the meaning of resistance in their lives.
Flying the tricolour red, white and blue of the French flag. Black and white wartime images of groupings of people. In black, bold letters, the word Resistance appears against the French flag. White letters spell out the words The Making of. The flag fades to a blackout, leaving the word Resistance in white. An Extant production. Maria O'Shoddy in profile, a mixed heritage woman with her hair in long brown twists, stands in front of a green door, holding a book, and there was light. Close up on a building bearing the inscription Lycée Louis le Grand.
My name's Maria O'Shoddy and I'm the Artistic Director of Extant. Extant's a performing arts company and we were formed in 1997 because there were a group of professional visually impaired actors who wanted to get together to explore how we could creatively tackle some of the issues that we were coming up against working in theatre. Things like access to different performance styles and also access as audience members as well. So we were formed really to tackle some of those concerns, and since then we've been trying to advance our body of work around creativity in terms of theatre practice that's accessible for us as performers and also for us as audiences. Back in January, during the first Resistance rehearsals, Peter Brook had visited our rehearsals and it was quite a phenomenal day. I couldn't quite believe that this awesome presence was going to arrive at this little youth club in Norwood and watch a day of our rehearsals, and we were all totally kind of fazed by this and weren't quite sure what to do, whether we should just go ahead and just carry on having a bog standard day where any fights or rows could erupt as they usually had been doing during rehearsals, or to try and set up something special to avoid all of that happening. So Eileen decided to set up something special, which was a sort of a long drama exercise, which is attempting to get the actors into the present and not into acting or anything. And Peter Brook arrived with his entourage and sat downstairs with me, and we had a chat about Jacques Le Siran, Alexander technique, Oliver Sacks, etc., etc. And then he came up into rehearsals and Eileen began, and Peter Brook sort of walked around the space and watched what we were doing and stayed for about an hour and a half.
Actors in rehearsal carry out an exercise where they move very slowly. Maria sits next to Peter Brook. Actors in a circle chase each other as part of an exercise. Eileen, the director, speaks to actors. Peter Brook talks to the actors and shakes their hands.
Thank you very much.
It had been such a traumatic experience getting this production to the point of completion on every level. When I say completion, I mean there are various stages of completion involved in any production. But to get to the actual end of it, when we completed the tour, had our run at the Riverside in London, and got through it without actually anybody being killed, it felt like a real amazing triumph to get to that point. And it'd been a really immense emotional roller coaster.
A female stage manager carries costumes in white plastic bags. She takes them through to a dressing room and hangs them on a clothes rail, smoothing them down. A lighting rig is raised. Phil Supple adjusts some lights. Ali is setting up the stage. Aidan dances with the actors. The company experience the model of the set. Eileen directs the younger Jacques. Maria in intense discussions in a corner. Ali describing while using big gestures.
I just thought I cannot allow this production just to finish and for everyone just to go off in their separate ways. I have to do something to mark the end of this, no matter how difficult it's been for all of us. And there were members of the cast that weren't talking to each other and not members of the production team that weren't talking to each other. And I thought, no, this is no good. I started out this whole project with it was meant to be sort of from my heart, and it was meant to have the best intentions. You know what they say about the road to hell, and that's where it felt like we had been. So I thought, what can I do? And I remember in that last week while we were at the Riverside, I thought, I want to give a memento to everybody. And what seemed appropriate? Well, it's, about war and victory and commemoration. So I had this idea about getting some sort of medals made up with an inscription on the back for each member of the team. And I got all these together. And I sent off, and the company said they were able to do them within the week, which was great, and they all arrived. And the last performance sent word round that I wanted everybody to meet in the theatre before we struck the set for the last time. And people were reluctant, they just wanted to grab their coats and rush off. But everyone came into the theatre, and I just stood there and said, it's been... it has been quite a phenomenal journey for all of us. It's been marked by a lot of ups and downs and very difficult moments for a lot of us. But we've got here, we've done it. It has been unique in its execution and in its ambition. And I'm proud of everybody and everything that they've given and to the project. And so I gave everybody a medal, and it said on the back of them for a valiant act in resistance for the actors and various similar sorts of things for the other production team. And it was, I could feel it energetically, it was a moment where everything between everybody sort of melted, and all of the hostility just for that moment just felt like it just kind of shifted away, for a moment, and there was a sense of coming together, and that was worthwhile. So I was really glad that I did it, and I took a deep breath, and I thought to myself, why not take it to France?
The company walk through a tree-lined avenue in Versailles. Maria walks past some classical statues, holding on Eileen's arm. Boats by a canal.
The production crew drove the set over there, and the actors and stage management went by Eurostar. And it was amazing arriving at Gare du Nord because that had featured so much in the script and the book by Jacques Luceron. And there we were, all disembarking off the train at the station, and it felt a very important moment, really, in the kind of the evolution of the project.
Liam, one of the actors, stand at the bottom of the Eiffel Tower. The Arc de Triomphe. A Paris courtyard with a flame flickering in a memorial stand. The company take photographs and chat.
I took the time to revisit the place that I had gone to do my initial research 5 years before, when I'd found Jacques Luceron's house. And I went back to his place, which was on the Boulevard Port Royal, I think it is. And again, we found his doorway, the doorway which is written in his autobiography that was published in 1953, but was describing a place of sort of 12 years prior to that in 1941, which was a doorway where all the recruits to his resistance cell came to be interviewed by him.
First 1600 hours.
Go to the blind.
It is rumoured in the year leading up to now that 600 boys have taken the road to Luceron's apartment.
Boulevard Port Royal, opposite the maternity hospital.
One of the original 52 watches a classmate for weeks before eventually being sent on to him.
The entrance is between the chemist and the sweet shop.
4 flights of 10 steps each lead to his front door, painted dark green.
And the doorway was opposite the maternity hospital on this road and lay between a sweet shop and a chemist. And when, back in 2001, I'd followed that description in the book and found the maternity hospital and opposite a doorway that was between a sweet shop and a chemist, I could not believe that sort of 60 years on or something, you know, this sort of environment was preserved in Paris in such a way. So we went back to the spot and were filming it, and Eileen turned up because she said she wanted to have a look at the doorway, this famous green door that is described so vividly in the play. As we were looking at the green door, it opened, and somebody was coming out of this apartment block, and it was just like one of those spontaneous moments. As they were coming out, I said to him, let's go in. So we took the opportunity to walk through and went in through the green door and into the courtyard of these flats that were all there in their original kind of state. I mean, obviously they were kind of built in the, I don't know, Victorian times possibly. And we looked at the courtyard, and they had these different sort of entrances that went into different parts, different blocks that were part of this courtyard. And so one of them was open, and we said, let's go up the stairs, let's go and see what they're like. And these stairs that led up to the 4th floor, which was, we knew from his book, was the floor that he lived on.
We need 2 rooms at the back of our apartment. They've got their own door and corridor. And what's the plan? A meeting will be held there Wednesday, 5 p.m. sharp. I swear, on my mother's life, I'm with you. Me too. There was no time for me to...
They all seemed like they had the original features, you know, and so we climbed up these stairs and they made this echoey kind of redolent sound, which, you know, he describes in his book, you know, he hears the noise of all these boys coming up the stairs, and as we climbed up the stairs, you know, we felt that we were recreating that sound. And we got up to the 4th floor, and there were these front doors of these apartments, and again they looked like they had the original features, these sort of door handles on and that, and it was just, it felt almost like a gift to be able to access this physical, real space that he would have been in and that he was writing about and describing.
Dying in here! So fast that no one counts!
I really think that just sometimes the magic works, doesn't it, for a performance, and everything comes together. And it was lovely. And we had a standing ovation.
A standing ovation from the audience while actors line up across the stage and take a bow. They bow again and leave.
It was a very moving evening, only slightly kind of disappointed. I felt disappointed by the fact that, you know, Peter Brook hadn't managed to get there.
François Clapier, a man in his 80s with short, grey, receding hair.
It was always my ambition somehow to get an interview with him, so we would have first-hand evidence of a blind French resistance leader talking about their experience, which had been at the same time as Jacques Lousseron was operating in France. I mean, Jacques Lousseron talks about this network of resistance cells all over France that they were connected with from, you know, up in the north of France right down to Marseille. Towards the end of this interview, became a little bit more open and softened a bit to us, and said he wanted to support the project, and they were, as an organisation, sort of his members were sort of dying off, and they wanted somehow to be recognised for what they'd done, what they contributed in the Second World War. He was at first very, very sort of suspicious about us and our intentions. If you would, Monsieur Clapier, would you tell us a little bit about yourself and your life now?
Bon, maintenant, depuis
I've been the president of this association of blind resistance fighters for the last 15 years.
Et il y a une loi du 8 juillet 48.
Our organization came about because of a special law that recognized the efforts of blind people in the resistance. At the time, the blind resistance members were spread out all over France, and we had university professors, physiotherapists, piano tuners, but out of 150 original members, there are only 7 of us that are still alive now.
Were, out of the 150 blind and partially sighted resistance fighters, were there any women?
Oui, oui, il y a eu.
There were 4 members who were women,
deux aveugles qui ont été
and
fusillés.
9 of the blind resistance were shot by the Nazis,
Et 5 déportés, dont
and
une
5
femme.
of us deported.
Eh bien, ils étaient.
I was recruited exactly the same way everyone else in the resistance was recruited,
C'est-à-dire par relation personnelle.
through people who you knew.
This newspaper is our principal weapon. Catch!
We will need to increase to printing 20,000 copies by February.
Well, have you heard about this new German order that's been issued?
Our distribution teams must absorb the first job.
All men over 21 will be sent to Germany for forced labor.
Continue. Ready.
Les Allemands respectaient la canne blanche.
Because the Germans respected the white cane, it made it easy for us to get around. For example, they wouldn't stop us or search our bags.
Is it because they didn't think that blind people could do anything?
Ça, il faudrait leur demander à eux.
You would have to ask them.
Bon. Bon, donc, alors, on confectionnait des tracts.
So, we began by putting out very simple and direct leaflets with things on them like "Down with the Germans" and "Kill the Boche." It was very manual compared with the way information is distributed today. It was a matter of taking a batch of paper and stamping it over and over with a rubber stamp. then cutting the paper up into leaflets. Then we would go and give this to others, who would go and stick these leaflets up on the walls.
Ensuite, alors personnellement,
In March 1941, I was the one who organized the first demonstration against the German occupation in Marseille.
et alors, moi personnellement, j'ai été arrêté en mai 41.
I was arrested in May 1941 by the French police.
En civil, les renseignements généraux, quoi, la police.
I was just sticking up a leaflet and a plainclothes policeman stopped me. Someone from the General Information. They beat me up to try and find out where I had got the leaflets, but I didn't speak.
Bon, et bien là, alors, là j'avais un chef de réseau qui était l'abbé Blanc.
We continued to gather information, and the fact that my uncle was the joint commander-in-chief of the port of Marseille meant that he was able to pass a lot of information through there, by boat and cargo ships, about what was going on. This continued until the commander of our network was arrested. This happened in 1943, when he and two women members went to a meeting and they were caught. He was deported to Buchenwald and the women were sent to Ravensbrück. I had decided not to go to that meeting. At that time, you either felt something was right or something was wrong. And I felt that meeting would not be right, so I didn't go.
La répression devenait...
Because of the growing repression and betrayals, our members were forced to leave Marseille in 1944 and join the Maquis, which is the resistance in the countryside and the mountains.
Non, décapité, ça veut dire...
The growing arrests put an end to a lot of different networks. They shot one of my comrades, and in July they shot 18 members, followed by another 7 a couple of days later.
Un camarade qui a été fusillé.
And a question about Jacques Lucéron. I just wanted to know whether he was ever a member of the association.
C'est une question par rapport à Monsieur Lucéron, Jacques
Oui.
Lucéron. Est-ce que lui, il était membre de la... Est-ce qu'il a été membre de
Oui.
l'association?
Oui,
Oui.
il a été le vice-président.
Le vice-président?
Oui,
Il était... He was the vice president.
avec Davin. Quand Davin était président.
When
Quand Davin était président. Quand Davin a créé l'association.
when the association was created, when Devin was the president.
Non, moi j'ai pas d'opinion. J'ai pas d'opinion parce que je ne l'ai pas connu.
I don't have an opinion because first of all I didn't know him.
Donc je ne l'ai pas connu. Donc je peux pas. Je ne peux pas, vous voyez. Par contre, j'ai connu parce que cette association, c'était assez curieux. Nous avions un père dominicain, membre de l'association.
So they had. He can't really speak about Jacques Lucéron because he didn't know him, but then Monsieur Clapier wants to say, but the association is very it's very singular, very curious. They had a Dominican father as a member,
Oui. Et un pasteur protestant.
and a Protestant priest.
Au fond, comme la résistance d'ailleurs.
Exactly.
Comme toute la résistance, c'était très mélangé.
Like the resistance movement, which was very mixed,
Yes.
very
Oui,
big people from.
je crois que c'est ça qui est fondamentalement, je crois que c'est ça, la résistance française, c'était quelque chose où il y avait de tout.
Fundamentally, it was that
Hein?
in
Il y avait
the
des...
in the French resistance, you had people from everywhere.
Yes.
Il y avait des tout jeunes, des très âgés,
Very young, very old.
des ouvriers, des universitaires,
Workers,
de tout, quoi.
Students, university students.
Has Monsieur Clapet read the Jacques Lucéron book?
Est-ce que vous avez lu le livre de Jacques Lucéron?
Oui, je l'ai lu, il y a La lumière au fût.
Comment ça s'appelle? What's it called?
And There Was Light.
Yes, And There Was Light.
Oui, je l'ai lu, mais il y a longtemps, hein, parce que...
You read it but a long time ago?
Oui, parce qu'il a paru, là on a refait une édition. On a refait une édition, mais c'était paru il y a longtemps, et je l'ai même ici, et je l'ai en cassette aussi. Alors.
That's another edition.
Oui.
Yes, he has read it, but it was a long time ago.
Okay. And did it strike him as being impressive in any way or not?
Est-ce que ça vous a frappé comme quelque chose d'impressionnant d'une façon ou l'autre?
Non, c'est bien écrit, parce qu'il savait, c'est un universitaire, hein, c'est bien
well
écrit.
Written.
C'est bien
Very
écrit.
well written.
Bon, mais enfin, si vous préférez, d'autres personnes, enfin, des gens très simples, ont fait exactement comme lui aussi, n'est-ce pas? Seulement, ils se sont moins bien exprimés.
D'accord.
Hein?
Oui, yeah, I mean, he finds it was very well written. After all, he was a university-educated person. But Monsieur Clapier says, there was lots of other people, perhaps we'd say much more simpler, who just who also had their story, but just weren't able to express it.
Oui.
That,
Il a été déporté, mais nous avons eu des camarades déportés.
He was deported, but we also had comrades.
Qui également.
There were other blind people that were deported and survived and came back. I want to ask you that.
Yes, donc il avait des gens, les aveugles, qui ont été déportés et qui sont revenus aussi, comme Jacques Lucéron.
Oui. Enfin, les aveugles, tous les aveugles qui ont été déportés sont tous revenus.
All the blind people who were deported came back.
Really?
Tous les aveugles de résistance.
Oui.
All the blind members of the resistance.
Non, aucun, que ce soit notre camarade femme, qui était déportée à Ravensbrück, elle est revenue, n'est-ce pas? Et les autres sont revenus également, ceux qui ont été déportés, les autres camarades qui sont déportés sont revenus.
Yeah, the two women who were deported to Ravensbrück and also other comrades that were deported came back.
Interpreters for the Monsieur Clapet interview were Derek Pearson and Odette Betterell.
Spirit of Resistance 2015. Project facilitator Jules Tipton.
This is a position that we call active.
Footage of elderly people in a workshop.
And this means that you are completely neutral. It's like, you're not a character. You haven't started to be somebody else.
A young person screws up a plastic sheet in another workshop.
You are still totally and utterly yourself. You take a breath in for me now, just breathe through your nose.
Older people doing stretching exercise, talking in groups. A woman handles an object with a gas mask in the foreground. Maria Ashodi, director of Extant, introduces the project at a presentation.
Older and younger generations to identify that spirit of survival that visually impaired people had experienced in the past and were also experiencing today.
When you look at a person, and that person has an issue, or has something on ground that he or she is saying, if you don't tolerate that person, and you don't accept that person, respect will lose its value.
I'm Gladys Williams. I was 21 when the war first started, and I was at Dymchurch on holiday in a bungalow.
A participant,
The
Liz.
street was quite just opposite a railway line, not a station. And of course, in the war, all the railway arches were used for shelters, and there was one at the end of my street. And of course, a landmine dropped exactly on the shelter, on the railway, and there was 44 people in the shelter, and only one person came out alive.
Well, it was on the radio that war had started, and then a policeman was riding along the front on his bike, calling out, "Take cover."
Yeah, so what you like about Hitler.
Storyteller Giles Abbott.
He did stop my mother eating that rice pudding.
Footage of a group circling a man and leaning in. A man handles a gas mask. Jewel's leading breathing exercise.
We had to black out all lights, so we had to find blackouts for curtains and cut it and got some wood, thin wood, and made a blind of it so as we could fit it to the window and leave it there, you know, and take it down in the morning.
My mother was now living in the building that she lived in until she went to university, which was a disused cobbler's tool shed with a corrugated iron roof and wooden walls. And there she was, and her mother had made the rice pudding, and there's this great big bowl of rice pudding presented to my 6-year-old mother, who said, "No!" Not quite spirit of resistance, but she was refusing. And my gran was, for God's sake, we don't have money to waste food, you're eating it, you'll eat it. And my mum was going, "No!" Above them, they kind of weren't really conscious of, but there was a kind of noise going in the sky above their heads, and a bit of but they didn't really hear that because they were locked into, "Eat your food, no! Eat your food, no!" And this went back and forth, when suddenly, poof, the rice pudding exploded and just went flying all over the room. Well, my mother, of course, was absolutely delighted and she didn't stop squealing with laughter until she saw that her mother was as white as a sheet and shaking all over. It was a dogfight overhead, and the bowl was gone, and there was a hole in the table, and on the floor beneath the table was a spent bullet. So Hitler, yeah, he did a lot of things wrong, but he did intervene on behalf of my mother and that rice pudding. I'm not suggesting we look at his entire record as redeemed on account of that.
A participant,
Working
Susie.
for a cheese company down Tilly Street.
Oh, right. What did you do?
Packing cheeses.
Did you like that job?
Yeah, because it was American, so they could bring disabled people because it was American firm.
Oh, right, yeah. How long were you working there?
Nearly 13 years.
That's really good. Why did you leave that job?
They got it redundant.
And they'd bombed all the shipping in the Mersey, and there was a big ammunition ship in the Mersey, and it hit that, and all the pipes and goodness knows what. Liverpool's on a kind of a hill, and everything comes down towards the river, and all the pipes come down towards the river, and it had blown all the water pipes and everything, and there wasn't a drop of water to be had anywhere in Liverpool. You couldn't get any water for tea or to wash or anything, and we came home for a holiday, and the streets that were there when we last went away had gone.
Footage of Jewels talking to the other project facilitator, Sally Booth. Susie and a volunteer look inside a box bearing the Red Cross emblem. A participant laughs with her face in her hands. An older woman chats while holding a box.
I used to pack biscuits in a box.
Did you? When you were
working at Pete Frames.
Brilliant! Oh, brilliant! What sort of biscuits did you pack in there, Gladys?
Army biscuits.
Army biscuits. Right. Okay. So when was this?
About 42, 43, 1943. Went in Saturdays to pack the boxes. Sent to the army.
I was 14 when the war started, and I was very much a child.
Lala's story on audio,
And
supported by scenic images.
It was apparently that the Germans were, moving in and in and in. And suddenly we were faced with Soviet troops, Soviet tanks, Soviet planes. We couldn't understand it at first, what was happening, and we didn't realize that there was a understanding between Germans and Russians to do the job together. Each of them had in mind a final destruction of people, everything. And Germans did it in one way, the Soviets did it in another. The Germans at least did not shoot people whom they took as prisoners of war. They respected the Red Cross, right?
Yes.
Soviets didn't. They just shot. Every prisoner of war was executed. Then it was time of deportations when they simply arrested people during the night, no matter what kind of weather, in terrible frosts, put them in the cattle trains, hole in the floor for the toilet, and Siberia, Kazakhstan, Vorkuta. There they would work till they dropped dead. So, you know, you had to have this resistance to it all. I mean, try to take it and really make the best of it, being happy that you're still alive.
All right, should we get to work? Yes. So, the way I've worked this out is I'm not going to give you much time on each section. You're going to have to think quite quickly. It sounds mean, but I have worked out from lots of practice that the more time I give you to think, the less sharp the results get. So, thinking on the theme of resistance, it could be from historical, or it could be from your, whatever. I'm going to give you only 1 minute to decide between yourselves who your story is going to be about and where that person is, where and when that person is. Does that make sense? Do you understand me all right? We'll see how you're doing after a minute. Ready? Go.
Footage of older people in a workshop raising their hands to speak. An older man talks.
And then I went to Peak Greens. I didn't like it there because the girls all took a mick out of me because I was the only blind one there. I told my dad, so my dad said I'll come up and tell him up. So I said, "Don't, Dad, you're only going to make it worse."
Giles stands in front of a group of people of different ages who are laughing. Woman participates in a discussion group. Susie handles a bolt-shaped container.
The story started with a personal misfortune, which ended up being people working for a public benefit, which is exactly kind of what the spirit of resistance is, isn't it? Something's wrong, see if you can fix it for yourself and others. Beautiful story.
Visually impaired pupils of Joseph Clark School.
Who is here with you?
This is my lovely friend called Jan, and she's a 10-year-old girl, and I'm saving her from you, because you want to attack her and conquer her land, and gobble her up, but you know what? I'm not going to let you do that.
Well. This is a trick, is it? This is a trick.
Jack Lutheran.
Wow. Sorry about resistance.
Jack what?
Resistant.
He was from France, and he was around when in the Second World War.
Yeah. It's like about something that adversity.
Yeah.
You conquer something against all odds.
Brilliant. Okay. So who did that in your story?
Janet.
Yeah?
Jan beating the giant.
Yeah. So who do you think in Jacques Luceran's story, who was the giant?
The Germans.
Yeah.
Because the Germans are control of most of France.
That's right.
And then of course he came back, France won back Germany.
Yeah.
France managed to retake the control of their country and put the Germans back.
Yeah.
It's like that resistance of, not giving in to fear.
Yeah.
Anything's possible.
Yeah.
And fear is all about making sure you can get over adversity and you can just say, nothing's going to beat me. Not in German soldiers.
So do you think that's a good thing to kind of have as a bit of a motto through life?
Yeah. never give up.
Yeah?
That you can survive anything.
Our school was evacuated before the war started as a kind of a run-through or something, and we'd all gone away 2 days before war started, and I remember war being declared, and we woke up and we were in this new place, of course, because when we arrived it was dark, you know. I mean, it was a long journey from Liverpool, and there was it wasn't like today. There was no corridors on the trains, and there was no toilets on the trains. And of course we must have been, we were all day travelling because we left in the morning, all the school. And when we got there it was dark, so I don't know what time it was, but they cleared a picture house out of the chairs, and we were all in this big hall which was Valentino's picture house or something, and there was hundreds of us, you know, and they started off where people were taking one child and then two, but nobody wanted three, and we were three. There was I was the oldest, I was 10, and then was my sister Teresa was 8, and my little sister was 6. And of course I got told before I left home, you must not split up, you have to keep hold of both your sisters, you know, you all got to stay together. So every time somebody wanted to take my sisters or one of them to look after, to foster, I wouldn't let go of them, because I said, no, you know, my father said, we have to stay together. Well, nobody wanted 3 children. I can understand now, I couldn't at the time.
Footage of Spirit of Resistance programmes fanned out on a table, audience taking their seats. A blind performer plays the piano accordion. Sally and Jules introducing the project. Another blind performer sings to a guitar. The audience attentively watch, nodding, and a close-up of one man laughing. The Resistance production poster of the 2005 extant tour.